Dear students, Namaskar. I hope that you all must be in sound health and must be continuing your studies with zeal and enthusiasm. Children, today we are going to learn about Chapter 6 of Class 10 of Science, Life Processes. Before starting with the chapter, let us recall what we already know. What is the source of energy for humans? How are different substances transported in human body? What is photosynthesis? Now we shall see what we are going to learn today. Life processes, nutrition, autotrophic and heterotrophic nutrition, nutrition in humans, respiration, definition and types, respiration in humans, transportation in human beings, transportation in plants, xylem and phloem, excretion in humans, excretion in plants. First of all, we shall discuss what are life processes. The processes which together perform the maintenance job are called life processes. Nutrition, respiration, transportation and excretion are some of the life processes. Nutrition is the process in which source of energy from outside called food is utilized by the body for growth and development. Nutrition is of two types, autotrophic nutrition and heterotrophic nutrition. Autotrophic nutrition. Children, do you know how plants prepare their food? Even the smallest plant is able to prepare its own food. Have you ever prepared your own food? The process through which plants prepare their food is called photosynthesis. Let us see how plants are able to prepare their food. Plants need the following materials for photosynthesis: sunlight from sun, carbon dioxide from air, chlorophyll, water from the soil. Photosynthesis is a process which takes place inside the leaves of a plant. The leaves of plants contain tiny pores called stomata, and the carbon dioxide from the air enters into the leaves through these stomatal pores. Plant cells contain smaller structures called chloroplasts, and these contain the green pigment chlorophyll. Plants are able to prepare their food in the presence of chlorophyll and sunlight and use carbon dioxide and water for this process and release oxygen as a byproduct of photosynthesis. This oxygen is released into the air through stomata. The prepared food in the form of glucose provides nutrition to the plants and help in growth of plant. The remaining food is stored in the form of starch for later use. The following events occur during this process: absorption of light energy by chlorophyll, conversion of light energy to chemical energy and splitting of water molecules into hydrogen and oxygen, reduction of carbon dioxide to carbohydrates. Sunlight is necessary for photosynthesis. To prove this, let us perform an activity. Take a potted plant and keep the plant in a dark room for 2 to 3 days so that all the starch is used up. Now take a leaf from this plant and cover a part of this leaf with a black paper strip and keep this plant in sunlight for 3 to 4 hours. Now take the leaf with black strip and boil it in alcohol till the leaf loses its green color. Now put a few drops of iodine solution on this leaf and observe. You will see that the part of the leaf which was covered with black strip does not show any color change, whereas the uncovered part changes to blue-black. The change into blue-black color indicates the presence of starch, and this activity proves that sunlight is essential for synthesis of starch. Now let us see whether carbon dioxide is necessary for photosynthesis or not. Take two healthy potted plants which are nearly the same size. Keep them in a dark room for 3 days. Now place each plant on separate glass plates. Place a watch glass containing potassium hydroxide by the side of one of the plants. The potassium hydroxide is used to absorb carbon dioxide. Cover both plants with separate bell jars. Use Vaseline to seal the bottom of the jars to the glass plates so that the setup is airtight. Keep the plants in sunlight for about 2 hours. Pluck a leaf from each plant and check for the presence of starch as in the previous activity. The leaf kept with potassium hydroxide does not show any color change because it did not get carbon dioxide, whereas the leaf kept without potassium hydroxide shows the color change to blue-black, indicating the presence of starch. Heterotrophic nutrition. The type of nutrition in which organisms obtain food substances from other plants or animals for energy is called heterotrophic nutrition. For example, cows and buffaloes eat grass, whereas lions eat deer and other animals. Nutrition in amoeba. Amoeba is a unicellular organism found in water reservoirs such as ponds. It continuously changes its position and shape. It produces temporary finger-like extensions called pseudopodia of the cell surface which help in movement and food intake. When amoeba senses food in its surroundings, it extends pseudopodia and captures the food particles and ingests them. Then the food particle moves to the food vacuole where complex food components are broken down into simpler food components with the help of enzymes, and the digested components are absorbed into the cytoplasm. The undigested food particles are expelled out through the cell membrane. Nutrition in human beings. Children, now we will discuss how nutrition takes place in human beings. We intake our food through mouth, digest it, and then utilize it. The undigested food is egested out through anus. Food moves through a long tube which runs from mouth to anus and called alimentary canal. This tube is divided into various parts: mouth, esophagus or food pipe, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum, and anus are the parts of alimentary canal. The mouth and buccal cavity. Children, food is taken into the body through the mouth. The process of taking food into the mouth is called ingestion. We chew the food with the teeth and break it down mechanically into small pieces. Our mouth has the salivary glands which secrete saliva. Saliva contain enzyme salivary amylase which breaks down starch into sugars. The mucus in saliva softens the food. The next part is tongue. Tongue is a fleshy, muscular organ attached at the back to the floor of the buccal cavity. It is free at the front and can be moved in all directions. It has taste buds that detect different tastes of food like salty, bitter, sweet, and sour. Food pipe or esophagus. The swallowed food passes into the food pipe or esophagus. Food is pushed down by movement of the wall of the esophagus. The stomach. The stomach is a thick-walled bag. Its shape is like a flattened U and it is the widest part of the alimentary canal. It receives food from the food pipe at one end and opens into the small intestine at the other. The inner lining of the stomach secretes mucus, hydrochloric acid, and digestive juices. The mucus protects the lining of the stomach. The acid kills many bacteria that enter along with the food and makes the medium in the stomach acidic and helps the digestive juices to act. The digestive juices break down the proteins into simpler substances. The small intestine. The small intestine is highly coiled and is about 7.5 meters long. It receives secretions from the liver and the pancreas. Besides, its wall also secretes digestive juices. The liver is a reddish-brown gland situated in the upper part of the abdomen on the right side. It is the largest gland in the body. It secretes bile juice that is stored in a sac called the gallbladder. The bile plays an important role in the digestion of fats. The pancreas is a large, cream-colored gland located just below the stomach. The pancreatic juice acts on carbohydrates, fats, and proteins and changes them into simpler forms. The partly digested food now reaches the lower part of the small intestine where the intestinal juice completes the digestion of all components of the food. Absorption in the small intestine. The digested food can now pass into the blood vessels in the wall of the intestine. This process is called absorption. The inner walls of the small intestine have thousands of finger-like outgrowths. These are called villi. The villi increase the surface area for absorption of the digested food. The food that remains undigested and unabsorbed enters into the large intestine. Large intestine. The large intestine is wider and shorter than small intestine. It is about 1.5 meter in length. Its function is to absorb water and some salts from the undigested food material. The remaining waste passes into the rectum and remains there as semi-solid feces. The fecal matter is removed through the anus from time to time. This is called egestion. Respiration. The process of obtaining oxygen and utilizing this oxygen for the breakdown of food particles for production of energy is called respiration. Respiration is of two types, aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration. This takes place in the presence of oxygen and food is completely broken down in this process and large amount of energy is released in the form of ATP. This process takes place in both cytoplasm and mitochondria. Glucose is broken down in the cytoplasm of the cells into pyruvate, which is a 3-carbon molecule. After this pyruvate can be broken down anaerobically or aerobically. In mitochondria, in the presence of oxygen, this pyruvate is broken down into carbon dioxide, water, and energy, and this is aerobic respiration, which releases large amount of energy. In the absence of oxygen in our muscles, especially during physical exercises, the pyruvate is broken down into lactic acid and energy. This lactic acid sometimes gets accumulated in our body and causes muscle cramps. In yeast cells, Also, pyruvate is broken down in the absence of oxygen and it gets converted into ethanol, carbon dioxide and energy. This is another kind of anaerobic respiration. In plants, stomata on leaves help in exchange of gases with the atmosphere. In animals, special organs are developed for breathing, for example, gills in fish and lungs in humans. Human respiratory system. Children, breathing refers to taking in oxygen-rich air into the body and giving out carbon dioxide-rich air from the body. Intake of oxygen-rich air is called inhalation and giving out carbon dioxide-rich air is called exhalation. Normally, we take in air through our nostrils. When we inhale air, it passes through our nostrils into the nasal cavity. From the nasal cavity, the air reaches our lungs through the windpipe. Lungs are present in the chest cavity. This cavity is surrounded by ribs on the sides. A large muscular sheet called diaphragm forms the floor of the chest cavity. Breathing involves the movement of the diaphragm and the rib cage. During inhalation, rib moves up and outwards and diaphragm moves down. This movement increases space in our chest cavity and air rushes into the lungs. The lungs get filled with air. During exhalation, ribs move down and inwards, while diaphragm moves up to its former position. This reduces the size of the chest cavity and air is pushed out of the lungs. These movements in our body can be felt easily. Transportation in humans. Transportation system in human beings is composed of blood vessels, blood and heart, which help in transport of all substances to different parts of the body. Blood. What happens when you get a cut on your body? Blood flows out. But what is blood? Blood is the fluid which flows in blood vessels. It transports substances like digested food from the small intestine to the other parts of the body. It carries oxygen from the lungs to the cells of the body. It also transports waste for removal from the body to kidneys for excretion. Blood is a liquid which has cells of various kinds suspended in it. The fluid part of the blood is called plasma. One type of cells are the red blood cells, which contain a red pigment called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin binds with oxygen and transports it to all the parts of the body and ultimately to all the cells. The presence of hemoglobin makes blood appear red. The blood also has white blood cells which fight against germs that may enter our body. When we get injured, a clot of blood is formed. The clot is formed because of the presence of another type of cells in the blood called platelets. Blood vessels. There are different types of blood vessels in the body. To transport different substances from one part of the body to the other. Arteries carry oxygen-rich blood from the heart to all parts of the body. The arteries have thick elastic walls. Veins are the vessels which carry carbon dioxide-rich blood from all parts of the body back to the heart. The veins have thin walls. There are valves present in veins which allow blood to flow only towards the heart. Arteries divide into smaller vessels. On reaching the tissues, they divide further into extremely thin tubes called capillaries. The capillaries join up to form veins which empty into the heart. The heart is an organ which beats continuously to act as a pump for the transport of blood, which carries other substances with it. The heart is located in the chest cavity with its lower tip slightly tilted towards the left. Your heart is roughly the size of your fist. The heart has 4 chambers. The 2 upper chambers are called the atria and the 2 lower chambers are called the ventricles. The partition between the chambers helps to avoid mixing up of blood rich in oxygen with the blood rich in carbon dioxide. Valves prevent the backflow of blood. Blood circulation in heart. Deoxygenated blood from the vena cava is received by the right atrium. This deoxygenated blood then passes to the right ventricle, and from the right ventricle, this blood is pumped to the lungs through the pulmonary arteries. There are valves present between the right atrium and right ventricles which prevent the backflow of blood. After oxygenation from lungs, the blood comes back to the left atrium of the heart through pulmonary veins. The oxygenated blood from left atrium then is received by the left ventricle. From the left ventricle, the blood is taken to the aorta, and from the aorta, this oxygenated blood is sent to the various parts of the body. Heartbeat. The walls of the chambers of the heart are made up of muscles. These muscles contract and relax rhythmically. This rhythmic contraction followed by its relaxation constitute a heartbeat. A doctor uses the stethoscope as a device to amplify the sound of the heart. Transportation of substances in plants. Children, plants take water and minerals from the soil through the roots and transport it to the leaves. The leaves prepare food for the plant using water and carbon dioxide during photosynthesis. Plants absorb water and minerals by the roots. The roots have root hair. The root hair increase the surface area of the root for the absorption of water and mineral nutrients dissolved in water. The root hair is in contact with the water present between the soil particles. Plants have pipe-like vessels to transport water and nutrients from the soil. The vessels are made of special cells, forming the vascular tissue. A tissue is a group of cells that perform specialized function in an organism. The vascular tissue for the transport of water and nutrients in the plant is called the xylem. The xylem forms a continuous network of channels that connects roots to the leaves through the stem and branches, and thus transports water to the entire plant. Leaves synthesize food. The food has to be transported to all parts of the body. This is done by the vascular tissue called the phloem. Thus, xylem and phloem transport substances in plants. Children, you learned that plants release a lot of water by the process of transpiration. Plants absorb mineral nutrients and water from the soil. Not all the water absorbed is utilized by the plant. The water evaporates through the stomata present on the surface of the leaves by the process of transpiration. The evaporation of water from leaves generates a suction pull, which can pull water to great heights in the tall trees. Transpiration also cools down the plant. Transport of food and other substances. Now let us consider how the products of metabolic processes particularly photosynthesis, are moved from leaves where they are formed to the other parts of the plant. This transport of soluble products of photosynthesis is called translocation, and it occurs in the part of the vascular tissue known as phloem. Besides the products of photosynthesis, the phloem transports amino acids and other substances. These substances are especially delivered to the storage organs of roots, fruits and seeds and to growing organs. The translocation of food and other substances takes place in the sieve tubes with the help of adjacent companion cells, both in upward and downward directions. Unlike transport in xylem, which can be largely explained by simple physical forces, the translocation in phloem is achieved by utilizing energy. Material like sucrose is transferred into phloem tissue using energy from ATP. This increases the osmotic pressure of the tissue, causing water to move into it. This pressure moves the material in the phloem to tissues which have less pressure. Excretion. The biological process involved in the removal of harmful metabolic wastes from the body is called excretion. Many unicellular organisms remove these wastes by simple diffusion from the body surface into the surrounding water. Complex multicellular organisms use specialized organs to perform the same function. Excretion in human beings. In humans, cells perform a variety of functions, and during these activities, nitrogenous substances like urea and uric acid are produced. These substances are waste and toxic in nature, so they need to be removed from our body. Blood removes these nitrogenous waste by taking them to the kidneys. The excretory system in human beings include a pair of kidneys, a pair of ureters, a urinary bladder, and a urethra. Nephron is the functional unit of kidney, which eliminates the waste from blood by the process of filtration. Each nephron is a cluster of very thin-walled capillaries. Each capillary cluster in the kidney is associated with a cup-shaped end of a tube called Bowman's capsule. Filtration of blood occurs in this capsule. Some substances in the initial filtrate, such as glucose, amino acids, salts, and a major amount of water, are selectively reabsorbed as the urine flows along the tube. The amount of water reabsorbed depends on how much excess water there is in the body and on how much of dissolved waste is there to be excreted. The urine forming in each kidney eventually enters a long tube, the ureter, which connects the kidneys with the urinary bladder. Urine is stored in the urinary bladder and pass it out through the urethra. The bladder is muscular, so it is under nervous control. As a result, we can usually control the urge to urinate. Artificial kidney. Kidneys are vital organs for survival. Several factors like injury, infections, or restricted blood flow to kidneys reduce the activity of kidneys. This leads to accumulation of poisonous wastes in the body, which can even lead to death. In case of kidney failure, an artificial kidney can be used. An artificial kidney is a device to remove nitrogenous waste products from the body through dialysis. Artificial kidneys contain a number of tubes with semi-permeable lining, suspended in a tank filled with dialyzing fluid. This fluid has the same osmotic pressure as blood, except that it is devoid of nitrogenous wastes. The patient's blood is passed through these tubes. During this passage, the waste products from the blood pass into dialysing fluid by diffusion. The purified blood is pumped back into the patient. Excretion in plants. Plants use completely different strategies for excretion than those of animals. Oxygen is removed from the stomata of leaves. They can get rid of excess water by transpiration. Waste products may be stored in leaves that fall off. Other waste products are stored as resins and gums, especially in old xylem. Plants also excrete some waste substances into the soil around them. Recapitulation. The maintenance of life requires processes like nutrition, respiration, transport of materials within the body and excretion of waste products. Obtaining oxygen from atmosphere and breakdown of food in cells in the presence of oxygen is called respiration. Autotrophic nutrition involves the intake of simple inorganic materials from the environment and using an external energy source like the sun to synthesize complex, high-energy organic material. Heterotrophic nutrition involves the intake of complex material prepared by other organisms. The left and right side of the heart helps to prevent mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. This helps in efficient oxygen transportation to cells. Normal systolic blood pressure is 120 mm mercury and normal diastolic pressure is 80 mm mercury. Platelets plug the leaks by helping to clot the blood at the point of injury. In highly differentiated plants, transport of water, minerals, food and other materials is a function of the vascular tissue which consists of xylem and phloem. In human beings, excretory products in the form of soluble nitrogen compounds are removed by the nephrons in the kidneys. Children, now I will ask you a few questions and I hope that you might be knowing the answers. My first question is, write down the names of the parts of human alimentary canal. So the parts of human alimentary canal are buccal cavity, esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine, rectum and anus. My next question is, what is artificial kidney? An artificial kidney is a device to remove nitrogenous waste products from the blood through dialysis. My next question is, where does photosynthesis take place in plants? Photosynthesis in plants take place in leaves. My next question, write down the equation of photosynthesis. So the equation for photosynthesis is carbon dioxide reacts with water in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll to form glucose and oxygen. My next question, fill in the blanks. Human heart has dash chambers and the right answer is 4. My next question, true or false? Normal blood pressure in humans is 100 by 50 mm mercury. And the statement is false. My next question, the food digested by small intestine is absorbed through dash into the blood. And the right answer is villi. With this, we complete our chapter and I hope that you all must have listened to the chapter carefully and understood it well. Children, stay safe, stay healthy, keep learning and keep growing. Thank you.